In June, which you mentioned, the attacks on Iran by both the United States and Israel took out much of Iran's attempt, we all believe, to develop a nuclear weapon. How much is left? How much has been destroyed? And do you think that Iran is really incapable of producing a weapon for quite some time now?
Well, from what we understand, Iran has been taken back in time in terms of ability to produce nuclear weapons. But we need to understand that Iran basically has three arms, let's say, of attack. One arm is indeed nuclear weapons, which they have been for years now have been cheating the NPT. They are part of the non-proliferation treaty, but they have been developing a secret nuclear weapon program. And when Israel managed to smuggle out the Iranian archives, nuclear archives, it was clear from the archives that they had this program for very many years, and they reached a very advanced stage. But nuclear weapons are only one of these arms. The second arm is the missile, long-range missile, that again they have been developing. And before the war, we had the information that they have been producing thousands of missiles per month. And for Israel, we are a very small country. We're about 20,000 square kilometers. And for us, any kind of nuclear weapon that falls in Israel is a catastrophe. We don't have the strategic depth. And of course, if we are bombarded with ballistic missiles, with nuclear or even conventional warheads, this is a major, major existential threat for us. And this is something we could not accept, obviously. And in addition to this, there are the proxies. As I said before, the Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, and the Hamas. And we've seen on the 7th of October what the Hamas did. I suppose we will speak about that a bit later as well. And the Houthis, who are disrupting the naval navigation in the Red Sea, are also supported by Iran. And from our point of view, we have the threats. Iran has been saying, the Iranian leadership has been repeating again and again that Israel has to be destroyed, Israel has to be erased from the map. And from our history, the history of the Jewish people, we tend to take seriously threats against us because we have seen that these threats are usually followed by action.
Thank you. But would you say that the nuclear threat from Iran, which may have materialized in the next few years, some analysts say that that threat has now been eliminated for a sizable number of years at least? Or do you still see a nuclear threat just looming around the corner? Good evening. I would like to welcome you to the Krasno Global Event Series. It's very nice to see all of you. We have a global audience from North Carolina and from across the United States, and indeed also from abroad, such as Slovenia, Germany, the UK, and many other countries. I'm Klaus Larres, and I'm the Richard M. Krasno Distinguished Professor of History and International Affairs here at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I've run the Krasno Global Affairs series since 2012, and our point is to bring some much needed sober thinking and analysis to global affairs. We want to avoid the overly emotional and vulgar debate which has become all too common today. We are non-partisan, of course. Today, our guest is the ambassador of Israel to the People's Republic of China, Eli Belotsercovsky. Thank you, Eli, for joining us from Beijing today, where it is quite early. Thank you for getting up early. How are you doing?
Thank you very much, Klaus. It's really a pleasure to be here. It's, as I said, it's worth the sacrifice of getting up early. And really, I'm very happy and very honored to be invited to this
Thank you.
program. And I'm sure we're going to have a very interesting discussion.
That is what we hope and expect as well. Today, we will talk about Israel in a world of turmoil and transition. We will cover the Middle East, of course, including Iran, Gaza, the West Bank, and Syria, but also we will look at Israel and the United States and perhaps Israel's relations with the wider world. I would like to encourage our audience to submit questions via the chat function of our Zoom screen. Our two Krasno assistants today, Zoe and Sloan, they will select them and read them out to all of us. After our initial conversation, the ambassador will be happy to answer your many questions. So please don't hesitate to submit your questions via your Zoom screen in writing. Let me introduce the ambassador to you briefly. Eli Belotserkovsky has been Israel's ambassador to China since June 2025. After serving more than 30 years in the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs in various roles, both in Israel and outside the country. He also serves at present as non-resident ambassador to Mongolia. Eli Belotsercovsky is a former Israeli ambassador to South Africa and Ukraine, non-resident ambassador to Moldova and to Armenia, and he was also a director of economic relations with India and China. He also was Deputy Chief of Mission at the Israeli Embassy in India and Deputy Chief of Mission at the Israeli Embassy in Cyprus. And he was also Deputy Chief of Mission at the Israeli Embassy in Singapore. And he also served as chargé d'affaires at the Israeli Embassy in Russia. The ambassador has a BA in International Relations and Far Eastern Affairs, focusing on China from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. And he also has an MSc in International Management from Boston University. Thank you, Ambassador, for joining us today again, and thanks again for getting up so early for us. It's only 8 a.m. in Beijing right now. Let me ask you straight away. There has been a huge popular uprising in Iran. Will the regime in Iran fall soon? And will the US and perhaps Israel attack Iran anytime soon? And would that make a lot of sense in your view?
Well, I think with regard to Iran, what we see, and we have been saying this in Israel for a very long time, and I think most of the international community was aware of that as well, is that the Iranian regime doesn't have the support of the people. It's a regime that was imposed on them, that they do not support, but they cannot get rid of. We've seen many demonstrations over the years against the regime. Every time people come out, people are trying to get free, to change, but unfortunately, they have not succeeded so far. We hope very much that at a certain point the Iranian people will be able to gain their freedom and to get rid of this very um, cruel, I would say, regime that not only oppresses them, but also, as we had seen in the last few days,
You
was
think it's
just murdering.
Do you think
Sorry?
it's so weak? Do you think at the moment it's so weak that it will fall anytime soon? And will the US embark on military strikes?
Well, it's a good question. I'm afraid I can't know. I don't think anyone knows at this point of time. But what is clear is that this regime has no legitimacy whatsoever. It has to go, and I think the Iranian people definitely deserve their freedom. They prove it with they go out despite the very brutal oppression, the killings that are taking place there of hundreds and thousands of people that are taking place there every day. I am really very impressed by their courage to go out on the street to protest when you have such a massive machine of oppression in front of you. every day. It's really a very impressive act of bravery.
And do you think military strikes would make a difference from an outside country?
It's difficult to say. It's difficult to say at this point. The Iranian regime, instead of investing in their own people and the economy, has been for many years investing in developing nuclear weapons, although they're not threatened by anyone. They've been investing in developing of long-range missiles that could reach even Europe. They've been investing in building up proxies like Hezbollah in Lebanon, like Hamas and Islamic Jihad in the Gaza Strip, like the Houthis in Yemen, and in order to destabilize the Middle East. And I think this regime is long, long overdue, and it has to go. And we really hope that its days are numbered, but it's difficult to say.
The international media reports that Prime Minister Netanyahu has actually asked President Trump not to attack Iran at present, as that would have very negative repercussions also for Israel's position in the region.
Well, I would say that, the media, as it normally is, and particularly on such a subject, is full of all sort of rumors and sayings and so on and so on, and it's very difficult to distinguish between the noises and the voices, let's say. So I wouldn't count on the veracity of this report in particular.
And there's also been a reporting that Iran and Israel agreed that they wouldn't attack each other in the current situation, that some sort of gentleman's agreement was arranged between them informally. Is that not correct?
Well, under our circumstances, it's very difficult to even establish any kind of channel of communication. And I don't think it's right, because I think with this regime, there is nothing to talk about. As you remember, we had a 12-day war with Iran in June. We were also attacked by Iran on the 13th of April 2023 and 1st of October, and this was 2024, sorry, and this was completely unprovoked. So no, I also have to say that before 1979, Israel had very good relations with Iran. There was a very big Jewish community of more than 100,000 Jews living in Iran, and traditionally, one of our greatest heroes is King Cyrus, the Persian king that released the Jewish people after the first exile. So we have absolutely no animosity or any kind of unfriendly feelings towards the Persian people and towards Iran. But unfortunately, this regime chose Israel as its enemy ever since it was established, and not only us, also the US and the West in general. And that's where we are now.
In June, which you mentioned, the attacks on Iran by both the United States and Israel took out much of Iran's attempt, we all believe, to develop a nuclear weapon. How much is left? How much has been destroyed? And do you think that Iran is really incapable of producing a weapon for quite some time now?
Well, from what we understand, Iran has been taken back in time in terms of ability to produce nuclear weapons. But we need to understand that Iran basically has three arms, let's say, of attack. One arm is indeed nuclear weapons, which they have been for years now have been cheating the NPT. They are part of the non-proliferation treaty, but they have been developing a secret nuclear weapon program. And when Israel managed to smuggle out the Iranian archives, nuclear archives, it was clear from the archives that they had this program for very many years, and they reached a very advanced stage. But nuclear weapons are only one of these arms. The second arm is the missile, long-range missile, that again they have been developing. And before the war, we had the information that they have been producing thousands of missiles per month. And for Israel, we are a very small country. We're about 20,000 square kilometers. And for us, any kind of nuclear weapon that falls in Israel is a catastrophe. We don't have the strategic depth. And of course, if we are bombarded with ballistic missiles, with nuclear or even conventional warheads, this is a major, major existential threat for us. And this is something we could not accept, obviously. And in addition to this, there are the proxies. As I said before, the Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, and the Hamas. We've seen on the 7th of October what the Hamas did. I suppose we will speak about that a bit later as well. And the Houthis, who are disrupting the naval navigation in the Red Sea, are also supported by Iran. And from our point of view, we have the threats. Iran has been saying, the Iranian leadership has been repeating again and again that Israel has to be destroyed, Israel has to be erased from the map. And from our history, the history of the Jewish people, we tend to take seriously threats against us because we have seen that these threats are usually followed by action.
Thank you. But would you say that the nuclear threat from Iran, which may have materialized in the next few years, some analysts say that that threat has now been eliminated for a sizable number of years at least? Or do you still see a nuclear threat just looming around the corner?
Well, I think once this regime has the intention to develop nuclear weapons, and it has a lot of knowledge, the knowledge you cannot destroy. Once there is intention and there is knowledge, at a certain point of time, they will get back to this kind of development. When and how, it's difficult to say at this stage.
Thank you. Let's turn to some territories much closer to Israel, that is Gaza and the West Bank. There has been the second phase of the so-called peace plan for Gaza was announced yesterday by Steve Witkoff, one of the president's confidential foreign policy envoys. And what does that second phase mean? Because I understand the first phase, the demilitarization of Hamas and some sort of ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, has not really been fully achieved.
Well, it all depends how you look at it, I suppose. The ceasefire is going on. I mean, we have occasional attempts by the Hamas to attack the Israeli troops that are stationed in Gaza. But by and large, the ceasefire is kept. We still have a body of one of the hostages out of the 251 hostages that were kidnapped on the 7th of October. One of them has not been returned, contrary to the agreement with the Hamas, and the Hamas still has to return his body. And a very critical issue, of course, is the issue of disarmament of the Hamas. This is a crucial issue, which at this point of time, we are not sure how it's going to take place. But one thing is clear: if the Hamas is still there, if the Hamas still plays a role in Gaza, Gaza will never become peaceful, and we will never be able to live in peace with them. Because after what we saw, what happened on the 7th of October, of this brutal, murderous attack, in which the Hamas was killed more than 1,200 of innocent people in a very, very savage way. I don't want to get here into the graphic details of this, but I think everybody saw it. It was clear that their intention is to destroy, to spread terror, and to destroy Israel. And when you have some organization that is able to perpetrate an atrocity of that magnitude, and when you have them saying straight, like they said straight after the attack, that this is just the first time we are going to come again and again and again, it's very clear that they have no place in Gaza, and there is no place for such extreme ideology, and we need to prevent the Hamas from playing any kind of role in the future of Gaza.
You mentioned a ceasefire, or that the ceasefire is holding. There has been much criticism of Israel for having attacked dozens of times by airstrikes and not just killed Hamas military, but killed a lot of civilians, Gaza civilians, hundreds of them at the same time. And that was after the ceasefire had been arranged. Is that really necessary? Can that not be avoided?
No, I think these reports are inaccurate. There have been some exchanges of fire. These attacks, the Israeli attacks, came after Israel was attacked and were aimed at eliminating specific heads of the Hamas that were perpetrating atrocities against Israel on the 7th of October, and were continuing to try to fight the Israeli troops in Gaza. Since the beginning of this conflict, unfortunately, there have been big losses among the civilian population of Gaza. We deeply regret any loss of innocent life. And our war was not with the Palestinian people, our war was with the Hamas. But unfortunately, the Hamas have entrenched itself under hospitals, under schools, they built 500 kilometers of tunnels, and they were staying in these tunnels. In fact, one can ask himself, why didn't they let the people to get into the tunnels so that the people will be saved from bombings? But they didn't let the people of Gaza into the tunnel. They kept the tunnels to themselves, and they just came out, attacked, and went back. And many of the major commanding points of Hamas were established under the hospitals, under schools, so that to create more casualties among the civilian population.
When you now look at television pictures of the situation in Gaza, you see the streets which are full of water. You see bad weather and tents which cannot hardly withstand the wind and the storm which at the moment are sweeping through that part of the world. And there's also continued complaint of a lack of medical facilities, a lack of medicines, a lack of food, and undernourishment of children and many other people. And many people call for Israel to be, to open its borders more, to let more provisions, including for housing and food and medicine, get into Gaza. We know that the argument is that Hamas will take these provisions and run away with them. But cannot there be a way found to make sure that the people of Gaza, as you said, the innocent people of Gaza, can survive in much better circumstances than right now, because the weather is atrocious right now.
Yes, but it's not only because of the weather. I think in general, the population of Gaza has suffered tremendously through this conflict. And as you say, quite rightly, when you see the photos from there, it looks quite terrible. But this is our policy. We have opened the border completely. Every week we have about 4,200 trucks entering Gaza with supplies.
Is the border to Egypt open? I thought it was still closed.
No, well, the border is obviously it's not open, but there are certain points through which the trucks can enter, and it's sufficient. All the aid that comes to Israel is being screened to see that there are no weapons or ammunition there, and then it passes and it reaches Gaza. So we have about 4,200 trucks with aid, with the medical equipment, with food, and since the beginning of the ceasefire, we had 33,000 trucks entering Gaza with more than 850,000 tons of supplies. Actually, you were speaking about the conditions. So we had about 430,000 tents and other equipment, like warm clothes, blankets, and so on, so as to try to ease the situation and to relieve the people there. And I think we don't see any more reports on lack of food or any other major problem. Also, the hospitals. There are 12 hospitals that are currently working in Gaza. So I think the situation is it's still very, very difficult, but we are moving in the right direction.
Even if these conditions have improved, as you say, I'm sure more could be done to help the people of Gaza.
We are trying our best, but it's a matter more of international community, and all the aid that we receive from abroad enters Gaza. We don't hold anything on our side. Again, it's a very complex situation because you still have a major significant part of Gaza that is controlled by the Hamas.
President Trump, sorry.
Yeah. No, so I'm saying when you come, when you see it from there, and you see the complexities on the ground, these issues are not easy, but we are trying. And the President Trump's initiative, the 20 points, the famous 20 points that he declared, and that we are following them, trying to follow them now. I think this is the best option for the people of Gaza to return to some kind of a normal situation.
President Trump also said a few months ago that he wanted to turn Gaza into the Middle Eastern Riviera. And yesterday we had that plan, that second phase published, which is meant to reconstruct Gaza over many years, admittedly. But is that the beginning of turning Gaza into a Middle Eastern Riviera, into some resort where international businessmen like Trump, for example, can make a killing?
Well, it's not for me to say. It's very difficult. I think we need to get to the practicalities of the situation currently on the ground, and hope that the situation will improve. I think this is our task at the moment.
What do you know about that second phase? What is that meant to look like? There's a Palestinian Authority overseen by a board of governors?
Well, the idea is that, and this is something that we have to create, is to have some kind of Palestinian government that will be overseen by some kind of an international board. And also there is supposed to be some kind of international stabilization force that will take over the security in Gaza. And we are waiting for the first, the initial stage of this is the declaration of this board that is going to be created.
Apparently, the former British Prime Minister Tony Blair is meant to be on that board. He also wanted to lead it, which seems to have been denied. It's now a Bulgarian diplomat who seems to be put in charge. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, but again, until the board is declared, it's difficult to say who is going to be.
I understand that. But do you believe that that new structure, with an international board and then a more local Palestinian authority running things in Gaza, do you think that is the way forward, which is a fruitful, productive way forward?
Look, we have to, there are different opinions, but I think the safest bet is to stick to the facts. And the facts are that President Trump's initiative, with it, we managed to reach a ceasefire. This is a fact. So if it's, it's easier, it's more difficult, it's more complex, it's less complex, but it's like this. With the President Trump initiative, we managed to get back almost all of our hostages. For Israel, it's a huge, huge thing because when you have hostages, when you know that your people are kept in inhumane situations, and now some of these hostages have the courage to share their experiences and this captivity and to tell about all the torture, physical and mental that they've gone through and so on. It's very difficult to get from the stage of the trauma in which Israel was after the attack to the post-traumatic stage. And now we are gradually can move. We still have one body of one hostage that is still in Gaza, as I mentioned. We need to receive him, and then we will be able to move to the next stage of the post-traumatic to deal with this with this trauma. But it was thanks to President Trump initiative that we were able to get the hostages back. So from our point of view, this is a very important initiative, a very important step, and actually the only thing that has worked so far. So we can be whatever skeptical or positive or supportive, but the facts are the facts. So we will need to see how the future will develop and what further steps will be taken. But I think we have a reason for a cautious optimism that things will move in the right direction.
Yeah, thanks very much. Let's have a quick look at the West Bank. The situation is not easy either. There's lots of complaints that the Palestinians are being discriminated against in favor of new settler communities. I think the Israeli government agreed to set up 19 more settler communities on West Bank territory. Will this not inflame the situation? What is the motive behind that?
Well, as you know, the West Bank is a territory in dispute. And, many people, particularly in the West, are speaking about the Palestinian state, establishment of the Palestinian state, and so on and so on. But I think it's very important to look back into history in order to address the roots of this issue of the situation in the West Bank. And in 1947, when the partition resolution has been passed by the United Nations, it divided what was called the Mandate territory under the British Mandate of Palestine into three parts, actually. One was Jerusalem, which was supposed to be under international jurisdiction. The other one was the Palestinian state, and the third one was the Israeli state. Okay, the Jewish state, let's say. And the Jewish population of those days has accepted this resolution. But the ones that did not accept this resolution were the Arabs. And there were seven Arab armies that have attacked Israel and tried to destroy it. As a result of this war, Israel managed to repel this attack and continue to survive. But the West Bank, at that point of time, was annexed by Jordan, and the Gaza Strip was annexed by Egypt. So why wasn't the Palestinian state created then? And this situation took place for almost 20 years, until 1967, when in the Six-Day War, Israel took over the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. So only then the issue of the Palestinian state came into power. Now, one more point, I think, which is interesting. Gaza was more or less a kind of a Palestinian state. There was no settlements in Gaza Strip. We withdrew completely from Gaza in 2005. There were basically we didn't have any problems with Gaza. There were no territorial disputes. We withdrew completely, and so on and so on. And what happened to Gaza? 2 years after our withdrawal, the Hamas took over and started to build a terrorist state, an extreme state that later on attacked Israel. It was not really a state, it was an entity. But nevertheless, we saw what happened. So I think the issue of creation of the Palestinian state is something that has to be developed. We can see on the West Bank, we see a lot of aid. The West Bank is one of the places which received the highest amount of aid in the world. Where does all this aid goes? Do the Palestinians in the West Bank have a high level of living as a result of this aid? Does it help them? And the aid is unconditional, which means you get it anyway. You don't need to do anything to get it. You just get it.
But how does that
build anything? You don't have to change anything. You don't have to build institutions. I think that from again, this is from our point of view, the Palestinians need to prepare themselves. They need to create institutions, to build separation of authorities, to have some kind of a development, and this aid has to be conditional by them fulfilling these conditions.
But how does it help to have 19 additional settlements in the West Bank? And there have also been reports for the last few years, really, of attacks on Palestinians by already established Israeli settlers who usually tend to be quite conservative, if not quite right-wing, and very nationalistic. And, there's been a lot of violation of human rights, which has been internationally often condemned. Why does Israel not try to prevent that instead of establishing new settlements?
Well, first, the violations of law, all the violations of law are being treated by Israeli police. And I think lately we haven't been hearing more of these violations because some action has been taken. And we are talking about a very, very, very small minority of people who have very extreme views, and these people are being taken care of. So I think this issue is being covered. The second point is that we have these territories are under dispute. We need to have a sort of a dialogue, a constructive dialogue with the Palestinians in order to solve this issue. But this dialogue can take place when the conditions are right. And when I mean this is at the moment, the Palestinian Authority transfers money to convicted terrorists that are in prisons and transfer money to their families. We see books that Palestinian children are studying in school. They are studying to hate Israel. Israel is blamed for everything. And this is something that I think we need to change. We need to get to a situation in which the Palestinians are ready. The leadership of the Palestinians is ready to live in peace side by side with Israel. And then we can discuss the issue of the territories and find some kind of a way to solve it.
Thank you. I'm sure that view is quite controversial, and we will discuss it with our audience in a little while. I would like to encourage our audience to submit their questions, and I will get round to these questions very soon. I just wanted to ask the ambassador to enlighten us about the situation regarding the Israeli neighboring countries, Syria and Lebanon. There's a new government in Syria. The leader of that government, who a former terrorist, but now he has become a respectable statesman, so respectable that President Trump received him in the White House not that long ago. But the Israeli government still has its problems with that new government. Enlighten us about the situation and why Israel really is quite skeptical, more skeptical than the United States towards the new Syrian government.
Well, first, we are talking with the new government also, but we have seen once this government came to power, shortly after, there has been a very cruel attack against the Druze minority in the south of Syria. And we have a significant Druze population in Israel as well. And we have seen that although we are talking about the new regime, but the methods of the regime were not new, unfortunately. And we have seen a very terrible attacks against the Druze minority. And this is something that really created a lot of alarm in Israel. And in addition, as you say, the background of the new leadership in Syria is problematic. Let's put it this way. So we really hope that we will be able to reach some kind of an agreement with this government, and that this government is going to mend its ways and get back to some kind of a peaceful approach. But it's work in process. We'll need to see how it goes.
There are quite a few Israeli forces still on Syrian territory. Will they stay, and how long will they stay? Any idea?
No, we have any territorial claims against Syrian territory. They will not stay, but they serve as some kind of a buffer for us because, again, we cannot risk an attack from Syria, and also to protect the Druze minority that is there. This is with regard to Syria. Sorry?
No, yeah, and how do you explain that President Trump and his administration is a little bit more optimistic about their new government in Syria than the Israeli government is?
Well, we need to live side by side with them, and it's our existence that at stake here. So this is something that we need to be cautious about.
And regarding Lebanon, there are many almost daily attacks by Israel on Hezbollah in Lebanon, and of course, often the civilian population is affected. How is that situation going to develop?
So in Lebanon, the situation is as follows. The government is trying to get Hezbollah to disarm Hezbollah, let's say, and at least to disarm it to the south of the Litani River, which is the southern part of Lebanon. They had some success in this, but still the Hezbollah is a very, very powerful force in Lebanon, which is actually a state within a state. They have their own command structure. They receive their instructions from Tehran, not from Beirut, and they're very powerful. I had the chance of visiting a tunnel that was uncovered in Israel that they dug from Lebanon into Israel in order to infiltrate their troops and attack civilian population in Israel. And this tunnel is really a state of art in civil engineering. So they are a very powerful organization. They have suffered a defeat from Israel during the last 2 years, but they are still quite strong. And we sincerely hope that the government, the Lebanese government, will be able to disarm them and to turn them into a political and not a military organization. And this is still in process, but they still have strongholds in South Lebanon as well. And until this happens, they are threatening us.
Thank you. What always puzzles me is that we know about Israel's excellent military, very, high technology, very well practiced and experienced. And despite that, very professional army, Hamas is still there, Hezbollah is still there, despite several years of war. Uh, if that has been the case for the last 2 years or so, will it ever be possible to get rid of Hamas, to get rid of Hezbollah? Can they be defeated militarily? Doesn't there need to be an alternative solution to defeat or to come to some sort of arrangement, peaceful arrangement with these two organizations?
But I think that if you speak about Hamas or Hezbollah, you can compare it to the situation that we had about 10 years ago with ISIS. Okay, there is no major differences between these kind of organizations because they all practice a very, very extreme radical Islamic uh, ideology. Now, we have seen that ISIS has been defeated. Has it been defeated completely? No, it still exists. There are still pockets. And we have seen recently an attack of ISIS against the American soldiers in Iraq. But to a large extent, it doesn't play a major role anymore. So the answer is yes, it can be defeated. It can be defeated, maybe not completely, but to a large extent, yes. And until this happens, unfortunately, we are under threat.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Let's turn to our questions, but one final question to you. Do you still believe in a two-state solution?
Well, I think in the long term, perhaps yes, but at the moment, we need to create the conditions to have this kind of state.
And when you say the long term, what do you mean? 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, or 2 years?
Well, first and foremost, it depends on the Palestinians themselves. If they will abandon this ideology of destroying Israel, of blaming Israel for everything, of using the aid in order to improve the living conditions of their people and not squandering it on other things, then probably not in a such long time.
Let's turn to our questions. Can I ask Zoe to ask the first question, please?
Yes. So, given the rhetoric of Israel's actions in the Gaza Strip, how has Israel's international relations shifted broadly?
Well, it's a very general question, but I'll try to refer to it. What we saw as a result of the 7th of October attack was a shift in public opinion, and not, I would not say an overall public opinion, but there were some areas in which we saw a lot of misinformed, misguided, let's say, even biased information that has been released. And I think the people, many people got carried away with all sorts of slogans without really understanding the situation. And we saw many demonstrations. But the problem was not that demonstrations were against Israel. The problem, the demonstrations were addressed against the Jewish people in general. And we have seen attacks, like unfortunately very recently in Australia, against Jewish communities, against Jewish institutions. And this is very, very worrying. We have seen it also in universities, where under the pretense of freedom of speech, we have seen a lot of hatred, a lot of hate speeches against Israel, but also against Jews. The Jewish students felt threatened. We have received this from very many students. We've been hearing this, and this is something that is very concerning. And with regard to our relations with other countries, we still continue having diplomatic relations with all the countries that we had before. So there I don't see any major issues.
Thank you very much. Sloan, would you have the next question?
Yes. So, in terms of governance in Iran, would Israel prefer the restoration of the Persian monarchy as opposed to a form of democracy?
Yes. Well, we don't, we don't foresee any kind of future for Iran because this is not our issue. This is the issue of the Iranian people. They are the ones who have to decide. But as I said before, I think this regime has completely lost its legitimacy, and a new regime a new government has to come in Iran. That's for certain.
Do you think that the Crown Prince has any credibility with the Iranian people, as far as you know?
Well, it's difficult to say. We've seen in the demonstrations there were flags of the old Iran and also pictures of him. To what extent? Very, very difficult to say. Under these conditions, you cannot have polls really. Credible polls cannot be conducted, so it'll be difficult to answer.
Yeah, thanks very much. Zoe.
How does Israel manage its relationships with the United States, and what advice would you offer to Ukraine on sustaining effective diplomacy?
Maybe you mention the names of the people who asked these questions and where they come from, if you can see it.
Yes, Vita Golod from UNC Chapel Hill.
So we have very good relations with the US. Well, not everything we see eye to eye, 100%, but I think there's a great deal of understanding. And of course, the US is our biggest ally. So yeah, I think the relations are very good. With regard to Ukraine, it's not for me to give. I'm not in a position to give any advice. But I feel very close to Ukraine because I spent 4 years there as an ambassador of Israel, and it was. I really admire the Ukrainian people. They are really very, very good.
Thank you. Sloan, please.
From Joshua, a history student at UNC Chapel Hill. He asked, does Israel plan on tutoring key Palestinian individuals in order for them to achieve self-governance eventually in a Palestinian formed state?
Sorry, can you repeat it? Just
Yes. So he interprets that you're saying that it's up to the Palestinians to develop their own government and structure. And he asked, does Israel plan on tutoring key Palestinian individuals in order for them to achieve self-governance?
we are not in a position to be any kind of tutor or anything. I think it's up to the Palestinians themselves. But I think the main thing is for them to stop blaming us for everything and to start working on their own development of their own institutions, of improving the lives of their people. And I think if they will take this direction, it will lead them much faster to where they want to get.
Thank you. And Zoe, please.
We have an anonymous attendee who asks, throughout this conversation, you've used language like managed and able to in reference to Israel's military ability to hold off Hamas or other Arab armies. As a Western ally in the Middle East, including large military and weapon support, do you believe that Israel is still in an equal power dynamic with these forces? And does Israel truly struggle to hold these forces back?
Well, I hope I understand the question correctly, but Israel is at the end of the day, although we are 50% of the conflict of the Middle East, but we are still a small country, and we do have a very strong army because this is our way of surviving. It's not because we like having an army. But this is something for us that is actually without it we wouldn't be existing anymore. So and vis-a-vis the Arab countries, each Arab country has its own policy and so on. We never threatened any Arab country or anybody else. Our aim is just to live in peace in the region and continue to prosper for the benefit of our people.
I have a viewer, Brian Kilev, who is wondering whether the reaction of Israel to the October attacks was disproportionate. And that is, of course, what many people are wondering, saying that the attacks as such by Hamas were, of course, totally unacceptable, totally horrendous. But was the reaction to them out of proportion?
Well, look, it's a good question, and I think many people ask this. I think first the question is what is proportionate response? Okay, during the Second World War, just as an example, and the Allies have bombed Dresden and bombed Köln and killed many, many thousands of people. Was it proportionate or disproportionate? It's all a matter of question. Now, this is a matter of history, but I'll get back to the reality. We were attacked, and I think since the Holocaust, it was the largest number of Jews being killed in one single day in the world. And this attack was, I'm not even saying that it was unprovoked, it was clear, it destroyed any kind of interaction that we had with Gaza, because before the attack, every day about 20,000 Gazans were coming to Israel for work. There were Gazans that were receiving treatment in Israeli hospitals. There was movement, there was inflow and outflow of goods, and so on and so on. This attack was completely unprovoked. We lost 1,200 people, and the Hamas has claimed again and again that they are going to come back. So what should we do? Should we not respond and wait for them to come back? Should we respond to some extent and then just stop? We are talking, I'm not trying to be condescending here, but the thing is that when people live in Europe or in US and they look at it through the screens of their probably computers nowadays, not anymore television or mobile phones, you can see it from far away and form an opinion. But when you live next to a territory which is governed by an organization which aim is to destroy you, and you've been living like this, you tried to live with them for many years, and then they come and they perpetrate an act that we saw and say that they are going to do it again and again and again. What can you do? You have to react. And you have to destroy this organization. And they've been, as I said, they've been very deeply entrenched among the civilian population. And it's very, very sad that these people suffered so much and so many people have been lost. But we had to respond, and we had to destroy this threat, because you just can't continue living next to somebody who acts in this kind of way. So yeah, it's very regretful that all these people were killed, and now a lot of people are suffering. I'm not underestimating this at all. It's a tragedy. But we have really tried to save lives. We've tried to warn the people in advance, to move them. Still, a lot of people got killed. That is true. We deeply regret it. But in this case, I don't know what is a proportionate or disproportionate. We had to get rid of the Hamas. And we haven't done it completely yet, but at least it has been weakened to such a point that it cannot attack us anymore. And we hope that we will be able to continue this process and to remove Hamas from Gaza completely.
Thank you. Do you believe that in a way, by this harsh attack which killed very many civilians in Gaza, that Israel has also damaged itself and undermined, when it says that Israel itself was a victim, of course, during the Holocaust and in other situations, but that has been undermined by what Israel has done itself inadvertently, but still a lot of civilians did get killed?
Well, it's difficult to say at this stage, but I think that if we really try to explain the situation, if we really try to present the picture as it is, and now we are trying to get as much aid as possible to the people there and to try really to rebuild Gaza. It's a long-term project, but still it's not impossible. I think then, we will move into the next phase. But yeah, we are really trying to see what can be done. We'll have to see.
Thank you. Zoe, would you ask the next question?
Yes. We have a question saying, where do you think Netanyahu will be in 5 years' time?
I really don't know. I can only say that we are going to have elections this year. So it's it's a democracy, and it's very difficult to know how the people will vote. So can't say really.
Thank you. Sloan, do we have the next question?
Yes, from an anonymous source. Do you truly believe the majority of Palestinians support Hamas?
Sorry, whom supports Hamas?
The majority of Palestinians.
I don't think the majority of Palestinians support Hamas. I think it's a minority. I think, again, these kind of movements, their base is in the problematic economic situation in the place where they come from. When the money is not invested in the people, but it's being used for other purposes, for personal gains and so on and so on, we can see that it creates conditions for movements with very radical ideologies. I think once the people are going to see that there is an investment in them, that their standard of living is improving as a result of the actions of their governments, they will support more the government and will not follow these radical movements like the Hamas.
Thank you. Zoe, and we have 5 minutes left, and then the ambassador has to rush to a meeting. So please, Zoe, ask the next question.
So we have another question from an anonymous attendee who asks, if you're fluent in Arabic and along those same lines, do you support the bilingual efforts in Israeli school systems? And how is this helping foster conversation amongst the population in Israel's Arabic-speaking neighbors?
Well, I think Arabic is a very important language, and we study it in schools in Israel, but not enough. I think we need to study it more. 20% of Israeli population are Arabs, and as you know, Israel is a democratic country, so they enjoy full rights. And the second official language is Arabic in Israel. So indeed, it is a very important language that unfortunately I do not speak. I have to admit. Maybe in the future, yeah, I think that's an important issue in Israel.
Thank you, Sloan.
Yes. The next question is, you have mentioned the Jewish populations in surrounding countries. Do you believe these populations are in favor of Israeli efforts despite their nationality?
Well, we hardly have any Jewish population in Arab countries anymore. Most of them were expelled. Some of them left. So this is not really an issue anymore.
Thank you. Zoe, please.
Yes. We have a question that says, has Israel's response made more enemies locally, long-term, or internationally than friends?
Sorry again.
Has Israel's response made more enemies locally or long-term or internationally?
I don't know if it made more enemies. I don't think so. I think the majority of the people who really understand the situation understand also our need to get rid of the Hamas. Like, as I said, 10 years ago, when there was a struggle, when there was a fight against ISIS, many civilian people also suffered during those days, and there was an attack on Mosul that killed many thousands of people. War is a very, very cruel thing. And again, when you live somewhere in a very peaceful environment in the West, it looks very brutal and very cruel, and you see all these pictures. And I completely understand this. I mean, if I would be living there, I would also feel like this. But at the end of the day, we are still at the age when you have these kind of radical ideologies, and they don't understand any other language but armed struggle. And this is the only language they understand. And we saw what happened with ISIS. Only through a decisive action of the international coalition, ISIS could be defeated. And I think the same goes for the Hamas, for Hezbollah, and the Houthis and other radical organizations like this. It's very unfortunate. It's very sad. But I think people need to understand that this is the only way to deal with them. And as long as they exist, they're a threat. They're a threat first and foremost to Israel, but they're a threat to all the free world, to all the values that we cherish. And this is something that has to be dealt with. You cannot continue living with this threat all the time, because today it's in Israel, but nowadays you already see the manifestations of these extreme ideologies in Europe. In some places in Europe, it's even the police doesn't dare to enter because it's so violent because of the presence of these movements. And I hope that this way of dealing with them is understood, and that we don't have any other choice.
Thank you. Can you briefly enlighten us about the domestic situation in Israel? I understand, and you correct me, but I understand that it's quite a deeply polarized society, that a lot of emotions have come, and polarizations and divisions have come up because of the war and the attack and the handling, how that has been handled. There's also the court case against the prime minister, which has divided Israeli society as well. There's a case about whether or not Orthodox supporters of the Orthodox faith have to serve in the military or not. All that, to me, sounds like a very divided society. What is the situation like?
Yeah, well, you are right. The situation is very how shall I put it? There are a big debate, many debates, in fact. There are from time to time we see demonstrations on the streets. There are many opinions, some of them contradictory. But I think one thing about the Israelis, when the war started, and straight away after this terrible attack, we had seen a lot of Israelis trying to buy a ticket to get back to Israel and to defend their country. This is something that is very common for Israelis, no matter where they are. They will come and they will fight for their country, and also many of the Jewish people that volunteered and came to help and to support. And this is something that in times of need, we are united. But still, we have a lot of issues, and every person has an opinion. In Israel, they say that you have even some people have more than one opinion, but in any case, everybody has an opinion, and as in any democratic country, people express it, people speak out. There are different issues, as you mentioned, the issue of the ultra-Orthodox joining the army. It's one issue. The division of power between the judicial and the political environment establishments is another issue that is in debate. And the issue of creation of a commission of inquiry after the 7th of October attack is another issue, and so on and so on. But again, since everybody is participating in this kind of debate that is going on, and it's going on according to the rules, to the democratic rules, meaning that it's non-violent, it's a purely political debate that goes on. I think eventually some kind of a compromise will be found. Again, this is not something very new because we have this ever since Israel was created. We have different opinions and different political parties that compete with each other on the support of the people. So I think eventually we'll find this.
What is the economic situation like right now?
Well, the economic situation, believe it or not, is very, very good. We have practically almost no unemployment. In fact, we need to bring workers from abroad. Our GDP per capita, we don't have yet the figures for 24, but it raises very, very, very quickly. We have investments in Israeli high-tech companies that keep going on. I think we have, after the US, we have the largest numbers of unicorns. So, yeah, you know, despite the war and the situation, still, at least in the economy, still companies express confidence in Israel, and this is very important.
Apparently, the Israeli government has told the American government that after a certain number of years, they don't want to accept American military aid anymore. Why not?
Yes. Well, this was a statement by our Prime Minister. I think he said it because at a certain point we are reaching a stage that we don't need military aid anymore. But again, this is a long-term mission, so we will need to see how we get there.
So does Israel want to become more independent from the United States? Is that a declaration of independence?
Well, I think we're pretty independent as we are. I think the military aid is not, doesn't make us more dependent or less dependent. But I think that as a developed country, the idea is to stand on our both feet completely. So.
Okay, thank you. Let's have a few more questions and then we let you go. And thank you for your efforts. Sloan, would you ask a question?
Yes. For our next question, we have one second. In an increasingly turbulent international sphere, to what extent should Israel involve itself in shaping the Middle East? And what forms would this take, if so?
Well, I think you can see Israel as an island of stability in a very turbulent region. We are stable because we are a democracy which has been consistent and in our foreign policy, and our aim is really to reach peace. We don't have any territorial claims. We don't have any other kind of claims. Our main goal is to live in peace with our neighbors. And we sincerely hope that this approach will be adopted also by the other countries. And we have, of course, peace agreements with a number of Arab countries like Egypt, like Jordan. We have very good relations with United Arab Emirates, with Bahrain, and we would like, or we hope very much that other Arab countries will join the Abraham Accords. And we think that Abraham Accords is an excellent vehicle in order to create a very new, very different Middle East that will work, for the benefit of its people. This is something that I think is very important, and we hope really that we will move this forward once things will come down.
The big prize here is Saudi Arabia, isn't that correct? Friendship and some sort of treaty between Israel and Saudi Arabia. But Saudi Arabia insists on the two-state solution first, and then a treaty, some arrangement with Israel. So how likely is that going to be that Saudi Arabia will join the Abraham Accords?
Well, I think it's a very complex issue. There are many factors here, and I think that's what diplomats are for, I suppose, in order to try to find the creative solutions for this kind of issues. And we really hope, we would like very much to have relations with Saudi Arabia and with other countries in the region. It's not only them, but of course they are very important country.
Okay, Zoe, can I ask you for maybe the almost last question?
Brian has a question and asks if you could possibly clarify when you mentioned no territorial claims, if you think that new settlements do qualify as that.
Yeah, well, this is not a territorial claim. As I said, these territories, they are not part of Israel. They're under military law. And there have been attempts in the past to solve this issue at the Oslo Accords. Unfortunately, they haven't brought any solution. In 1999, we had a very famous Camp David summit between then Prime Minister Ehud Barak, President Clinton, and Yasser Arafat. And the conditions that Israel has brought, the suggestions, the proposals, I think they were very generous. And also the Americans thought like this, but even this, the Palestinians were not able to accept. So I think we need to reach a stage at which the Palestinian leadership will be ready to take a very courageous decision and say, okay, enough is enough. Now let's talk seriously. We want to have peace with Israel, and not only say this, but also do things like stop paying what we call pay for slay, money for terrorist acts, and stop educating their children to hate Israel and invest in development of their Palestinian population. I think then we can talk to them and reach some kind of a solution. Just to remind you, when we were in Gaza, there were also settlements in Gaza. And in 2005, we withdrew completely from Gaza, dismantled all the settlements and so on. So it's a matter of finding some kind of a partner that will be able to live side by side with Israel.
Let me put you on the stop regarding international development. Everyone in the US talks about Venezuela, of course, the possibility of an invasion of Colombia and Cuba, even Panama. And as you know, sometimes even Canada is mentioned, but above all, recently, Greenland. How do you view that? How does the Israeli population view that? Isn't that all kind of crazy against international law, and really it would mean might is right, as it often is anyway, but should we really, pursue a course of like that within the Western world, within the civilized democratic world?
Yeah, look, when you see it, when we see Venezuela on our screens, it looks pretty distant and more or less probably like when you look at the Middle East from the US. So these problems are very far away from us. We are very much into our own issues, and we are not a superpower. We don't play worldwide. We are a country that is focused on its survival, and this is something that we are engaged at now. So with these big issues, we don't really deal.
I thought you would give me a very diplomatic answer toward the end. Thank you very much.
Yes.
One final question. If you look at the Middle East, if you look at Israel's position, where will we be in 5 years' time? What is your hope? What is your fear?
Well, I sincerely hope that the voice of reason will prevail, that we will have more Arab countries joining the Abraham Accords. I hope we'll have more peace agreements. We hope that radical movements will cease to exist, or at least will be weakened to such an extent that they will not be able to influence and to create pressure on governments or even take action and attack other people. I really hope that we will find a kind of a language of negotiations, of discussions, of talking to each other, a much better way of communicating, and also having some kind of once I remember we had this kind of vision of having products that are said made in the Middle East, so it's like having a more cohesion and more stronger ties with our neighbor, and that's something we hope for.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador. It has been a pleasure to have you here. You have certainly enlightened us. It was a pleasure to have you. Thank you for all your insights, and we will have a lot of food for thought now. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for this opportunity. And we hope for a better world.
Indeed. So do we.
Thank you.
Goodbye. And thank you for our audience to join us tonight. We will have another Krasno event in 2 weeks' time when the former Foreign Minister of Australia, Gareth Evans, will join us to talk to us about the Indo-Pacific and Australian-Chinese relations and China's role in the world as seen from an Australian perspective. For now, thank you very much. Good night to everyone. Thank you to our 2 Krasno assistants, of course, and thank you again to the Ambassador of Israel to China for joining us tonight. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.